Hello, my fellow gnomes, and welcome back to episode 12 of our tower defense. Now, this is kind of going to be a bit of a two-parter video because it's a big one. It is probably one of the most requested topics, and that is, well, people have been asking about range. We're going to cover that eventually, but people have been asking about how to upgrade towers. So if you see, once I've added this one guy down, I've then got this little menu appears, and if you want, I can pay 75 gold. And I can click to upgrade him into an archer, and then again into a crossbowman. So we've got this for all of our units. We've got different upgrade paths, and we can upgrade them like so. We can click them, and we can bring them up. Now, before we can do any of the scripting, though, we're going to need to add in some GUI, first of all. So this first video is going to cover how to create this little screen GUI that you see on the right-hand side of the screen here. And then once we've got that set up, we can then go about scripting it, which actually isn't too much more to do. We've got a lot of the base code already set up. But if you want to find out how to make the GUI, then keep watching and I'll show you how in this video. Now at the moment, we've got this info that sort of goes along the top. We've got the towers menu that goes on the left-hand side. So it probably makes sense to add in our new frame for this sort of selection info onto the right hand side, wouldn't it? So what we'll do is we'll add in a brand new frame into the game GUI, a brand new frame, and we'll call this frame selection. And then for its size, well, we're going to need to want to position it on the right hand side. So the position, we'll put 0.8 of the way across, and then we want to make it 0.2 of the width. Remove the extra offset or pixel value, and for its height, well, we maybe will make it 0.6 of the height and 0 extra pixels. So we'll have something like that, and then we want to position it a little bit of the way down the screen rather than being in the top corner. So position we'll set to 0.2 or 0.25 maybe. So there we go. It's going to be nicely halfway down. That looks pretty good. Then inside of this frame, we're actually going to have a few more frames. We want to know what the object is, what the tower is that we've selected. So we want its name. Then we're also going to want some information, some stats about it. And then we're also going to want some buttons to upgrade or sell and so on. So let's add in some more frames inside of here. The first one we will call, we'll just call this the title frame, which will have its name inside. So its position, well, it's 0, 0, that's fine. And then size, we're going to set to 1 all the way across, 0 pixels, 0.2 of the height, and 0 pixels. So it's going to be that top half, not half, that top 20% of it. And then we'll add in and actually make sure we turn off border pixels to 0. And we can set the background transparency to 1 as well. We don't want any transparency for this main frame either. Let's set this to fully transparent. There we go. And then we'll add in a brand new frame, or we can just duplicate this one, Control G. And then we'll rename this from title to be stats. And the stats are probably going to be, well, first of all, they need to be below this one. So its position is 0.2 on the Y axis. So there we go, it moves it down. And then for its height, well, we probably set this to be, instead of 0.2, how about 0.3? So then these two together, they will make up half or 0.5 of the entire selection frame. And so then we can have one more frame inside here, and this is going to be our buttons. So we'll name this one action, and its position will be 0.5 of the way down, so it's below these two frames. And then for its size, we'll make that 0.5 as well. So now we've got these containers all set up. How about we actually add in some information? So into the title, we'll add in a text label first of all. And we're going to call this text label the tower name, because that's the information we're going to put in here. We'll turn off the border. We'll make it fully transparent again. But this time, we want to make sure the text is scaled, of course, so it fills it up nicely. And we'll set the font to what we've been using so far, which I think it was Oswald. There we go. And maybe we'll add in a text transparency. So we see this property here, text stroke transparency. If I set that to 0, then it makes it extra thick. And instead of it being all black, we will make the outline white instead. So there we go. It gives it a bit more contrast so it's easier to read, even if it's against like a black background like that. And then how big do we want this to be? Let's set the size. So we don't want it to be in pixel values, of course, so we'll make it 0.6 of the width, 0 pixels, and then we'll make it all of the height. So 1 and then 0 extra pixels, because remember, this is going to fill the title frame. There we go. The actual text we're going to set from the script, but for now we just sort of create a little dummy. So maybe we'll call this wizard, just so we can get a feel for what this is going to look like. And then right next to this on the right, we're going to place a image, the image of what the tower looks like. Now, if you remember, we've already got the images you should have created inside of your config folders. So we've already got these images ready to go. So inside here, I'm going to add in a image label and make sure this is positioned correctly. So its position is 0.6 of the way across. Make sure we're selecting the image label. Position will be 0.6 of the way across, so it's after the text. And then for the size, we just need to make sure it is 0.4, 0 pixels, 1 of the height, and 0, which is going to make it this slightly funny shape. And if we then got the picture, say for the wizard, into the config, grab that image and copy that, Control C, and pasted it into the image label to the image property, like so, it's going to end up a little bit stretched, which obviously isn't what we want. So make sure the scale type is set to fit, and then it's going to look a little bit better. And then it's just a case of removing that white background. Seeing as I created these all as PNGs with transparent backgrounds, the image itself is transparent. It's just the image label object. So set the transparency background to 1. And there we go. That's our title label or frame complete. Now we want to create the stats. So inside of here, I'm going to create a brand new frame. And this is going to be across, right? It's going to be all the way across. So the size is going to be 1 on the X, 0. And then I'm going to make it 0.3 of the height and then 0 pixels. So we get a long, thin bar like so. So this is going to have the name of the stat inside of it. So add in a text label. And this is just going to be called the title. And so it'll have a stat, say, for the text, it'll be something like range. And make sure we set the font to Oswald. And we will scale the text again. And of course, we need to make this fit. So the size will be 1 for the, actually not 1 on the X. We maybe want this to be 0.5 or something. 0 and 1 on the height, like so. And then we're going to want to have some text next to which actually tells us the value of the range. So we'll duplicate this and we will rename this from title just to be value. And then we will set the text just to be an example again to be 10. And we'll position it to the right. So the position would be 0.5. So then we have something like this, range 10. Now, if we want to make this a little bit more fancy, we can do. So one thing we could do is we could select both of these, first of all, and make sure they're fully transparent. And there is no pixels or anything like that. And then we're going to make the background transparency of this long, thin frame to be something like, how about 0.5 will do nicely. And then we could give it a color. We could make it a yellowish color, something like that. And then you could also add in a little image, a little icon to represent the range stat. So we could add in an image label. Again, you've got to make sure these are all the right sizes. So I bet you can guess what we might want to do this time. 0.1 of the width, 0, 1 of the height, and 0 again. So it's just going to fill up that first tenth, or maybe you can make it a little bit bigger, 0.2, say like so. And then obviously you need to change the position of these other ones. So that would need to be, instead of at 0, 0, it would need to be at 0.2 of the way across. And make sure your value would then need to be 0.7 of the way across. And it could only be 0.3 wide. There we go, something like so. And then for your image label, you would then need to find something that represented the range, right? So maybe like a radius image or something. Now, as it happens, I've already found an image, so I'm just going to paste that into the image label here. Paste that in. And there we go, I've got this little funny circle thing. I'm going to make sure that my image label has a background transparency of 1, so it blends into the yellow thing. And again, I want to make sure this isn't stretched out, but it's set to fit, so it looks a little bit nicer. And maybe I'll color this in black, so the image color I'll set to black to get a little bit more contrast. There we go. And then for this title, instead of it being centered, I'm going to center it off to the left. So we'll go to the text X alignment. We'll set this to left. And there we go. I think that looks a little bit better personally. And maybe we will get rid of the border size on this. So set that to 0. And there we go. So we can name this frame now to range. And then if we want another one, well, we'll just duplicate it. And we'll name the next one to the next stat. So the next stat is the damage. And obviously, instead of being at yellow, it'd want it to be some sort of maybe reddish color. Now, at the moment, they're both on top of each other. We could go about positioning them all again, or we could use the UI list layout. So we just add that in, and there we go. They're going to nicely appear below each other, which makes our life a little bit easier. And if we want, we can add in a little bit of padding as well. So how about we add in just a very small amount, like 0.025 padding. Just adds a tiny little gap there. Then we can leave this all pretty much as it is. Maybe we'll have the vertical alignment, we'll center that off. So it adds in a little bit more space. And then for our damage, obviously, we just need to change the value of the title from saying range to saying damage. And then the image as well, we're going to need a brand new image. Again, you can look for one of these in the toolbox if you want. You go to toolbox, look for some images and do a search for, say, a sword, for example, something like that. But I've got my image, so I'm just going to go and copy that over and paste it in. There we go. I've got my little sword. And then finally, I need to have something for the cooldown. So I'll duplicate this again. And this time I'm going to make this a blue color. And we will name this cooldown, the name of the frame. And then the text inside it, that title text, we will name that cooldown. There we go. And then I need an image for the cooldown. And I'll just copy and paste that over again to the cooldown. There we go. And now all I need is maybe I want to make sure these are always in the correct order, because these could swap around and change, which isn't really what you want. So let's go to, I think I want the range to be at the top. So all we need to do is make sure the layout order is set to 0 for range. For damage, if you want that to appear next, make sure the layout order is set to 1. And then I want the cooldown to be at the very bottom, so I'm going to set the layout order of that to 2. If you want, you could use 1, 2, 3, or 100, 200, 300. It doesn't really matter, but always the bigger number is going to be at the bottom. So there we go. That's our stats all ordered, looking pretty nice. And you can customize these a little bit if you want. Maybe I'll tell you what we might do is we might color in the values so they don't look all quite so black and plain. How about we give them a text color of blue, like so, and then we give them a text stroke transparency of 0, so it's a black contrast. I think that looks pretty nice. We'll do the same for each of these. So for the range as well, we'll make the text yellow. And then 0 transparency for the text stroke, like so. And then finally for the damage, let's do that as well. Select the damage, select the value. Text color 3 will set to red, and text stroke transparency to 0. Cool. So now we need to go and create some buttons for ourselves inside of this action frame. So what we will do is we'll add in, of course, a text button. Add one of those in, and it looks, well, pretty horrible, to be frank, doesn't it? So let's go about and make this look a little bit better, shall we? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a UI corner element. So that's just going to round off the corners. It already looks a little bit nicer. Now again, I would quite like to have a little icon inside of this rather than just having text. So I'm actually going to remove the text where it says text button, delete that, make it empty. And then I'm going to add in a text label into the text button. And I'm going to add in a image label as well. And so the image label is going to be positioned on the left, just like we created for these frames. So let's see, how big do we want this to be? Maybe we'll set the image to be, for its size, 0.2 of the width, 0 pixels, 1 or 100% of the height, and 0 extra pixels. Something like so. And then the text label is just going to fill in the gap, isn't it? So that size is going to be 0.8010. So it's going to fill the remaining half and make sure the position is set to 0.2. So it's encountering for the offset of the icon. And we actually need to make sure that this text button is the correct size as well. We don't want this to be in pixel values either, do we? So let's set this to 0.8 of the width, 0 extra pixels, and then we'll do 0.25 for a quarter of the height and 0. So there we go. It's going to be something like that. And then if we were to add in another UI list layout, like so, we can actually make sure this is centered. So fill direction, vertical, that's fine. Horizontal alignment, if we set that to center, it's going to center that off for us. And if we want, we could set the vertical alignment to center as well. Although that probably looks a little bit weird it being so far down. So we'll keep that as top. And then let's just change the name of this text button. So we'll name this will be our upgrade button. And we're going to give it a greenish color. That would seem to make sense, wouldn't it? So let's go to its color, background color. And we're going to set it to this darkish, well, it's not dark, a medium green. The text label, we'll make sure that's fully transparent. There we go. So now we can see the green of the button. And we're going to set this to be Oswald, of course. Make sure its text is set to scaled, like so. And make sure that the image label has its icon. So again, I've already got an icon, so I'm just going to copy and paste that in. It's a little plus icon, kind of like a medic icon, really. And make sure that it's set to be, instead of stretch, to be fitting. And then I'll scroll up and disable or make it fully transparent, like that. And then this text label, I'm going to want to align it to the left again. So where it says text, X alignment, set it to the left. And how about we make the text scale to be white, and then we'll give the text stroke transparency of 0. So it sort of has a black outline. And in fact, that's looking all a little bit too tight, isn't it? It's a bit wedged in there. So maybe what we'll do is we'll add a bit more room. So position 0.25. So it's got a little bit of padding. And then we'll just need to reduce the size from 0.8 to 0.75. So it's all nicely contained. And obviously the name of the text, we'll rename this to be title. And the actual text itself will just change to upgrade. So there we go. That's our button. A little bit later on, we'll probably add like a cell button or something. So we could add that in now if we want. We would make this black, maybe. Black. And you could call this cell. And the text inside of it would then be cell. And then for your icon, Well, you could have whatever you like, but I will probably have the sort of the bin icon to make it clear you're deleting it. And then you'd want to add in some padding as well, wouldn't you? So again, a very small amount of padding, just 0.025. And then maybe a config button as well you could have. Duplicate this, and you would have a config, name it config, and we will set it to be a sort of a grayish color. How about something like that will do, I suppose. Make sure the title text is set to config. And then we just need to grab an image. So I'll copy and paste the one I have here. Paste that in. There we go, I've got a little cog. And then I might want to order these in a certain way. So I think I always want the upgrade to be at the very top. Have the layer order set to 0. And then maybe config would be in the middle. So select the 1. And the cell would be at the bottom, so I'll probably have that set to 2. There we go. And there we go. That's looking pretty cool. I think maybe we should add a little bit more contrast to our little frames up here, though, for our stats. Let's go to our titles, select all of them, and we're going to add a bit of text stroke transparency to them as well. So set it to 0, and then we'll make sure it is white. There we go, we've got a little bit more contrast now. I think that looks a lot nicer. So there we go. We have got our UI up and running for our wizard. Obviously, we haven't done any of the scripting for it yet, and that will have to come in our next episode. So hopefully now you've got some jazzy UI set up, and soon we'll begin scripting it when we select our dude over here. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you shortly in the next episode where we'll get scripting this thing. Goodbye!